To think of a people as numbered seems a cruel concept, suited to concentration camps or Orwellian totalitarianisms, but surely not the egalitarian society of the United States. Yet America is attached to a combination of digits. This is the intelligence quotient, or IQ, of its citizens, which accords this rating system enormous sway in deciding the course of an individual's life. From the immigrants who made their way through the inspection lines at Ellis Island searching for their American dream, to the thousands of men who risked their lives by enlisting in the military during World War I, to the millions of students populating the nation's schools, IQ testing is employed to sort and classify people based on the mysterious trait of innate intelligence. The fact that IQ is not always an accurate measure of competence presents a significant problem. As a result of its use, many potentially successful people are not given a chance to realize their abilities. Used throughout the 20th century, IQ testing has had a profound impact on the cultural diversity, military hierarchy, and education of American society by serving as a filter to distribute opportunity. The concept of intelligence testing as a means of human processing originated in Europe. Francis Galton, an English polymath inspired by the work of Charles Darwin, created a series of physiological tests based on the assumption that intelligence, like the physical characteristics studied by Darwin, is an innate, inheritable, and measurable trait. The psychologist Alfred Binet improved upon Galton's research. Commissioned by the French government to create an exam that could sort and classify schoolchildren, Binet created tests that focused on higher reasoning, language, abstract thinking, and complex cognitive abilities, as opposed to physiological traits. Modern IQ tests are largely based on Binet's work. Henry Goddard, an American psychologist, discovered Binet's exams on a trip to Europe. He introduced them to the United States just as the fear of the feeble-minded and a corresponding surge in the eugenics movement had reached a peak.
The history of IQ tests is about the history of modern human processing. So what's happening in America at the turn of the last century? We're busy passing in the states universal education laws, so everybody's coming to school. Families are moving from the country to the cities, so there's urbanization going on. Everybody has to go to the high school, everybody has to go to the elementary school. We're no longer at the one-room schoolhouse phase of our development, but now we really have to stratify.
The impact of IQ testing was particularly profound at Ellis Island. There, the tests determined which immigrants were feeble-minded and therefore deemed incapable of contributing to American society. A low IQ score had the potential to send an immigrant back to a home country that he had desperately struggled to escape. Immigrants with greater linguistic and cultural barriers separating them from the American Ellis Island physicians were more likely to be sent home, regardless of their actual intelligence. Test results easily affected by mistranslations and misunderstandings decided the fate of thousands. To accommodate the volume of immigrants that passed through Ellis Island every day, a series of performance questions were developed that were intended to rely very little on language, culture, or academic experience. These exams included items like memory tests, verbal questions, basic arithmetic, and the cube imitation test. Using the new exams, physicians began searching only for correct answers rather than a sound thought process. As a result, more people were excluded from the United States on the basis of feeble-mindedness. In 1908, before the exams were introduced, only 186 people out of slightly less than 600,000 were sent home, but in 1914, after the introduction of the tests, 1,077 out of 800,000 people were excluded. The introduction of the intelligence quotient at Ellis Island also had the effect of allowing stereotypes to be attached to certain groups of people. Non-English speakers were consistently proven to be less intelligent than Anglophones, creating lasting stigmas. Ellis Island IQ tests were as significant to the course of American history as they were to the course of each immigrant's life. The exams were filters for society, excluding thousands of people from the opportunities and freedoms that the United States represented, and fastening permanent labels to underprivileged nationalities. IQ testing was employed in the military as a means to group thousands of men based on ability. Like the Ellis Island tests, the military exams failed to measure accurately traits that would actually predict success with military endeavors. Instead, the tests measured acculturation. Robert Yerkes, the president of the American Psychological Association, convened a group of psychologists to develop exams for the military. Yerkes sought to use the intelligence exams to create a meritocracy within the U.S. Army, an institution that for decades had relied almost solely on seniority to rank its members. World War I presented a unique opportunity to test Yerkes' ideas. Warfare had become increasingly specialized, and the Army was more willing to accept criteria for assigning recruits. Yerkes and his colleagues created two tests, the Alpha and Beta exams. It was agreed that the aim should be to test native ability rather than the results of school training, Yerkes wrote. The test questions did not achieve this aim. Items on the Alpha exams, for example, asked where silk came from and who commanded Union troops at Mobile Bay. Even an average score required knowledge that only a formal American education could provide. As a result, recent immigrants scored much lower on the military tests. Undermining Yerkes' theory, the military found that many of the subjects that performed poorly on the exams proved to be adept soldiers.
If you score highly on these tests, that seems to help people get a good job, let's say. But how well they do on that job is another question entirely. And the work by Yerkes in the military, and you're quite right, that he saw these tests as a way of making decisions about which recruits would go to officer training and which recruits would go to the front line. And I think a strong case can be made that making decisions that literally are life and death decisions for individuals on the basis of these very modest correlations is really a very questionable practice.
The use of IQ is nowhere more widespread than in the American educational system. As explained by journalist Michael Fine, a test that takes from half an hour to an hour and a half may determine a child's academic life, his profession, the courses he will take, the classmates with whom he will associate for many years, the attitude of the teacher toward him, or the school or college he may enter. IQ tests were first administered in American schools to group all children based on their academic potential so as to better accommodate their instructional needs. As experience with administering IQ tests evolved, they were used less often for the general student population and instead used mainly to help assess students with suspected learning issues or to identify giftedness. The majority of standardized tests that students currently take are IQ-derived rather than IQ-based. IQ tests operate on the assumption that all children of a certain age group, regardless of their personal history, have had the same exposure to the material being tested. The tests are standardized on native-born, white, middle-class American students. Because of the way the test questions are developed, IQ and IQ-derived tests are weighted considerably in the favor of more privileged students, but they are used to measure children from every socioeconomic background. Studies have shown that factors other than IQ, such as self-discipline, are more reliable predictors of a student's academic success. The test's potential for cultural bias and their failure to account for factors that have a strong impact on academic success make their widespread use of questionable efficacy. The influence of the tests in American schools, however, is indisputable. IQ tests have had enormous impact on American society. They have decided which immigrants were allowed into the United States to start families and businesses. They have determined the distribution of responsibilities and opportunities in the armed forces. And, most prominently, IQ measures have influenced the grouping of children in the school system, shaping their education and future careers. Although numbering people through IQ seems to create a fair and efficient way of distributing opportunity, the IQ testing process has many flaws.
If someone does well on an IQ test, that certainly tells us something. They've got some smart. But think of the folks who might not do so well on those kinds of tests because they didn't have a lot of formal schooling. And everybody admits that there's a direct correlation between amount of formal schooling and how well you do on tests like that. They haven't had a lot of experience taking those kinds of tests.
Right.
They also don't invest as much in them. So there's all kinds of reasons through which we can explain somebody not doing so well on a test like that, other than some intellectual deficiency.
The IQ test marks thousands of people with a statistic that supposedly defines their capacity to achieve, but may instead deny them that chance.